Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tigers Down Under. We're at the unusual time of a Monday because we've had the international break and the deadline day to talk about as well. So we'll get cracking starting with the United game before we talk about deadline day, the ownership, internationals, and then also the Burnley game. I'll start with you, Logan. How did you find the United game? It was obviously a tough pill to swallow with the loss coming so late.
Oh, certainly. I think we probably all came away feeling slightly aggrieved, just purely because the performance was so encouraging. I think if we're to be honest, United probably deserved the victory in the end because of the amount of pressure they applied. But yeah, you couldn't fault the effort, and I certainly think that that 1 point wouldn't have been too much of a injustice in the end.
Mitch, how did you see the game? Because obviously, I mean, Curtis Davies had a tremendous game, and so did Yak in goal. And who was your standout for the game?
Has to be Davies. He was something else. He's been something else all season. He's always been a good player, but he's really stepped up in the last few games. And yeah, he was by far the standout player.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to look at the stats. He had 5 interceptions, and the next best, Blind, had 4. He had 17 clearances. The next best was Elmo with 7. He had 5 blocked shots, and the next best was pretty much take your pick of anyone else who got a blocked shot in, because everyone else had 1 at best. So he's had an outstanding game, and as you say, an outstanding month. And he's up for Player of the Month. Do you guys see him much of a chance to get that with Hazard, Valencia, and also Sterling in the running?
I think the way the Premier League goes, one of those big names, or bigger names rather, will certainly come away with it just because of who they are. But one thing I was going to say about Davies is he just seems to, for me, seems to be the standout player in a team when it's probably when he's played alongside Dawson in the past and he takes a bit of a backseat. I don't think we see his best football, but when he's the main man, he really seems to relish that responsibility and does a great job leading from the front.
If you had to pick the top 3 performers for the game, though, I mean, obviously we've all got Davies as our top performer. Who would you give the other 2 to, Logan?
It's a tough one. I was surprised with Huddleston's form. I thought he was pretty decent. As well, and Yak as well, as you mentioned before, made some pretty critical saves. So probably those 2.
Mitch?
Yeah, I think I have to agree. Huddleston's obviously been really hot and cold for us over the past few seasons, but the same with Davies. He's stepped up the last few games. He seems to have got his best passing back, I suppose. And yeah, Yak has taken everyone by surprise, I think. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, to only concede one goal from open play so far in the first 3 games for Yak I don't think many would have expected that, and he obviously has carried on the form from the tail end of the season from the playoffs as well, so that's great to see. A player that might be unsettling Yak, though, I mean, if we talk about our deadline day business and I guess also our deadline day eve business, because we managed to make 6 signings in the space of 2 days. We will start with Marshall, I suppose. Do you guys see him as a risk to unsettle Yak for the Burnley game, or do we see Phelan giving Yak a bit of a decent chance to kind of keep his place, and really it's his spot to lose? I'll start with you, Logan.
It's a tough question. I think it's probably one of those ones that at this stage you'd say it's almost 50-50. I mean, it could go either way. The Yak certainly doesn't deserve to be taken out of the number 1 position, but because we know who Marshall is and what he's capable of, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see which way Mike Phelan goes.
Mitch, what are your thoughts on the signing of Marshall, and do you see him sort of as the number 1, almost guaranteed?
Well, I don't think he would have come to the club with the intention of being the number 2 keeper. Well, I guess he would have assumed, well, not assumed, but probably expected to be number 1. I really have no idea which way Phelan's going to go. I don't think Yak, as Logan said, deserves to be dropped at all, but the name of Marshall and what he has done over the past few seasons, I guess last season he wasn't overly impressive, but we know he's got it in him to be good, so I have no idea which way it'll go.
It'll be an interesting team that goes out against Burnley, and we'll chat about that game in a little bit. We also made our record signing in Ryan Mason coming across from Spurs. It was a long and protracted pursuit of him because I think we were linked quite early in the window as well. How do you guys see this signing? Who do you see him replacing in the first 11, Mitch?
I'm really excited for him. Actually, I liked him at Spurs. Probably when he set up that goal for Danny Rose, our second last Premier League game before he went down last time. I thought that was, I don't know, that season he was really good. He's obviously not played a lot of first team action since then, but I don't know who he replaced. Possibly Myler, maybe. I really don't know. Again, I don't know what Phelan is thinking. I don't know how Phelan's done this, so I don't really want to judge because obviously we all thought we wouldn't be where we are right now. So I'm just going to let him do his work and see what happens.
Logan, what do you make of the signing of Mason? Do you have much of an opinion of him and where he'll sit in the team?
I tend to agree with Mitch. I really enjoyed him at Tottenham. And when I heard him linked early in the window, I was very excited by it, but I thought it was one of those throwaway links that was just never going to eventuate. So what she said before, that you mentioned it was a long, drawn out process. I'm still kind of in a little bit of shock that he did end up coming. And I think that it's probably given us a boost in the midfield where in the past we have had workers like David Myler, but as we know, David Myler, he battles in many ways, and that's what we like about him. But I think Ryan Mason just has that ability to kind of drive at defenders that little bit more. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the dynamic. And I can't answer the question. I don't know how they'll set up or who he will replace. But I'm looking forward to seeing him in black and amber.
Two players that we could be almost certain won't feature in the starting 11, though, of course, as you guys have said, we don't really know how to read what Phelan wants to do with the side. But Keane and Weir both signed from Man United for about $1 million each. Strike me as signings more for the long term and perhaps a bit more depth and rotation in the cup competitions as well. What do you make of those two signings? We'll look at them as a collective. I mean, Weir was the captain of their under-21 side last season, I think, and he's played in a range of positions at left back, on the wing, and also through the centre. And he looks quite promising from the sound of things from United supporters. And Keane obviously was on loan at Preston last season and scored a couple of goals, and he's been a few places now. How do you see these signings as signings for the future, Mitch?
As a whole, I can't be unhappy with them, I suppose. Coming from United, they've obviously got to be pretty decent players to have made a name there at such a young age, I suppose. I haven't heard of Weir, so I can't really comment too much on that. But obviously Keane's got his name behind him, and all the United supporters I've talked to said it was a really good, big coup for us. So as a whole, I'm happy for it. I guess we'll just have to see what happens in the future, though.
Logan, what do you make of the two signings, and do you see them featuring much in the side, or as we've kind of said, I mean, maybe more cup players?
Yeah, I think you probably will. You tend to see more of those two in the cup fixtures and on the squad rotation, I guess. But I guess the thing for us is we're probably optimistic, having signed someone like Sam Klukas. I'm probably kind of looking for them to
that's true.
And if they can come on and surprise us in the same kind of way that Sam Klukas has, who was also, I think he probably came for the same price tag. Then it would be a smart bit of business for Mike Phelan.
And then there were a couple of signings we made quite late in the day, leaving everyone hanging. But Mbakani was one that we were linked to all day pretty much, with various whispers kind of getting leaked out and teased. And there was a bit of a guessing game for quite a patch of the day where people tried to guess which former Premier League striker we were actually going to be signing. 7 goals in 15 starts for Norwich. I mean, I think he probably scored a couple off the bench, and he had 14 appearances off the bench. So I guess you can look at that as 7 goals in 29 appearances. He seems to like to score from inside the box, but of course we had the same opinion of Hernandez pretty early last season, so that's not necessarily going to be something that doesn't change. He's on loan, but I think there's the option to buy at the end of the season, presumably if we stay up. Logan, do you see this as a good signing to complement Hernandez up forward?
Oh, certainly. I think he offers a bit of flair, and he has got a relatively good goal scoring record outside of just his time at Norwich too. So look, I think that anyone who's reasonably proven up front to accompany Hernandez, who we know what he's capable of, I was quite happy with it.
Mitch, I know we looked at the highlights together and had that same thought that he likes to use the bottom of his boot to score his goals with. But what have you made of the signing?
Yeah, I'm really not sure on this one either. I've only seen a little bit of him. I think the goal against Liverpool was the only goal I watched happen live. So, and he played pretty well that game. So, I suppose I'll have to wait and see till he runs out in the black and amber. But, yeah, I really have no idea.
And then the one that I think we can all agree we probably have no idea, but we're maybe the most excited for was Marcus Henriksen, who was signed basically after the deadline and almost at 9 a.m. our time, midnight in the UK. We'd been linked to him for about a week or so, and we thought it was a certainty to happen, and then thought it was a certainty not to happen, and it was kind of on again, off again. 12 goals in 28 league appearances last season. He played in the same side as Janssen, who signed for Spurs a bit earlier in the window, and he actually beat Janssen to the player of the season for AZ Alkmaar last season, so that's certainly quite promising from him. It's initially a loan, but automatically becomes a permanent in January, and I'm assuming that's to do with our owners and who ends up having to pay or something like that, is the only thing I can think of. Is he probably the most exciting player that we've signed this window, Mitch?
Either him or Mason. I'd probably say Mason purely because I've seen him. But I've watched a few videos and I don't want to be that guy. Like, I've watched YouTube highlights. I know he's good, but his highlights were very impressive. And the fact that you said he got the player of the season over Janssen obviously means he does have a lot to offer. So I'm extremely excited and extremely curious as to what he's going to offer.
And Logan, what do you see him bringing to the side? Do we see him sort of as that flair player to replace Diame?
He looks very tidy. Just from again, as Mitch mentioned, that you don't want to be that guy who reflects on YouTube highlights where every player looks like Cristiano Ronaldo in their 3-minute segment. But he definitely just
with the backing of bass music or trance music or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. But I think he seems to me to look like a very clinical player, and I agree with you, Alex. I think he probably is our most exciting prospect. That just to see what he does have to offer, but it's going to be interesting. He is probably the person that I'll be paying the most attention to, pending his spot in the starting side against Burnley.
And we've touched on the ownership situation there, and there's been a few snippets coming out over the last week or so, and the talk is that it will be confirmed within the next week. I think Ehab in his program notes before the United game basically suggested that was going to be their last game in charge. Reflecting back on it as a whole, how have you guys seen the Allams ownership of the club? I mean, it does have to be acknowledged that they did save us from liquidation back in 2010, but we took the highs with the lows as well. But I guess we'll start with you, Mitch. We'll try and keep things optimistic. We'll say, what was your high point of the Allams ownership, and how do you kind of see their legacy in that sense?
Yeah, probably what you said, just when they saved us from liquidation, I suppose. I'm not really sure I can think of any other highlights as such.
It's appointing Steve Bruce, maybe?
Oh, yeah, that would definitely be it, 100%. And sticking with him, I guess, throughout that whole time, even though there were times where we didn't want him and times where we did, but I think at the end of it all, it was probably a good thing that we had him for so long, because he obviously was the best manager we've ever had. So, yeah, actually, that would definitely be it.
Logan, I hope I haven't stolen your idea, but do you have any other highlights or fond reflections you can think of about the Allams ownership?
I think as a whole, if you look at it, when they did come in and save us from liquidation, as you mentioned before, and then signing Steve Bruce, you kind of wonder how it could have gone so pear-shaped from there, when they kind of endeared themselves to the fans and everybody was all on board with the Allams. Fast forward to the state that they're kind of leaving the club in now, and yes, we are a Premier League side, and there's a lot of positives to draw out, but the fact that the name change saga, I think, will always be and how they've done the season ticket pricing and just the way that they've treated the fans based on the back of their good work early. I think it will always be remembered for as a disappointing reign. And yeah, like I said, from how they started, it's almost unbelievable that you could destroy that reputation so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, for me, looking at the FA Cup final, that was almost the high point for me in terms of the club as a whole. Obviously, there'd been the name change saga for that season, so there were already a lot of issues behind the scenes with the supporters and the owners. But on the field, at least, the FA Cup final, and then even fast forward to the following deadline day, when we signed Ben Arfa, Ramirez, Diami, and Hernandez. And I think the Allams brought out pizza for all the fans that were waiting around for Ben Arfa to sign. And part of me kind of thought this was a turning point, that everything was going to be right again, and there was this mending of the relationship between the owners and the supporters. And while we are looking at the positives, it is important to remember there were a lot of negatives, as you say, Logan, and it is a reign that we're all quite happy is over now. And so I guess we just look forward to the new owners, and hopefully they can and get all the supporters back on side. I know that Amber Nectar have released a pretty good article today of things they hope, things we hope they think, I think is what they've called it. And it's basically a list of issues that they hope that the new owners can rectify, starting with something as simple as using the club's name in social media and in all forms of publications with the supporters. And something as simple as that, which doesn't cost anything, can go miles to fix relationships with the supporters. The other thing they can do, of course, would be getting a certain caretaker manager to sign on the dotted line. And word is that Phelan will be signing a permanent contract sometime this week. I think we've made our thoughts pretty clear on him, but from both of you, what are your thoughts on Phelan signing a contract to become our permanent manager?
I think it's certainly. It seems like the players are happy. They've been quite public in their support for Mike Phelan, and it just seems like, from as Mitch mentioned before, from nobody really expected us to be sitting where we are already and produce the type of performances that we have when we consider the players that we had available, and it seemed like a very doom and gloom kind of beginning. So for Mike Phelan to be able to kind of show himself under those conditions would suggest that he's the man for it, and he definitely has the players firing. He even had Jose Mourinho throw his support behind him. So look, it all looks positive. Although I did see Martin O'Neill linked again.
I have a feeling that's come from the Sun, though, and I'm not too sure there's much in that. It might just be them connecting the dots that Phelan hasn't yet signed a permanent contract. But I think there's going to be all these sorts of rumours and innuendo until it finally does happen. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. Mitch, what are your thoughts on Phelan?
Yeah, basically what Logan said. The fact that we are fifth right now under a caretaker manager, he
could win manager of the month as a caretaker.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking that how many managers have been up for the award as a caretaker after 3 weeks, especially with 13 fit players. It's incredible what he's done. So yeah, I'll be ecstatic for him to sign with us permanently.
On the field, we've had the international break, obviously, and one player in particular has stood out, and that was Robert Snodgrass with his hat-trick overnight. It was obviously against Malta, but people say that, and then you forget that Malta have actually had some half-decent results in recent international breaks. I think they only lost by 1 goal to Croatia, I think it was, and a couple of other sides. So they're not, they're not the same as Gibraltar or somewhere like that, who will lose 12-0 in a game. So for Snodgrass to get a hat-trick is still quite a commendable effort. And his first goal was something pretty special, even if he might not have necessarily meant it. Henriksen and Diamande also lined up against Germany for Norway, and Robertson and Marshall also started for Scotland against Malta. Mitch, what was your thoughts on our international players and how they've fared?
Well, I saw Andy Robertson miss a relatively easy goal right before Snodgrass's first, actually. So that was I was pretty upset for my boy. But I'm not sure Snoddy meant that goal, but it was something special. So, and then Yeah, just I think is that his first hat trick since he's been back.
Yeah, I'd assume so. Well, that was his first international game since his return from injury, so it's a
Oh,
pretty decent way to return.
yeah, definitely. So that's massive for him. He's going to be crucial for us this season. And I was a bit worried that he'd be out for a while after he hit that post, but
Yeah.
nah. But yeah, I'm extremely happy for him. I didn't watch the game, so I can't really comment. But I did read that Henriksen didn't touch the ball for a fair bit on Twitter, so I'm not sure what happened there. But yeah.
And Logan, what do you make of it? I think Elmo also played for Egypt during the break, so we've had a fair few players in action. I think Hernandez might have been an unused substitute for Uruguay as well, so hopefully he's fit and firing for the Burnley game. But what did you make of our players in international action?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. The highlight has to be Snodgrass getting his hat-trick. A hat-trick at international level, albeit against Malta, is still something to celebrate. And whenever you have players away going into international squads and scoring, that can only be a good thing. So hopefully he can repeat his hat-trick performance this weekend against Burnley.
Cool and collected on the ball. Manages to get the ball through to Diame. Now can he unleash Hernandez? He does, but he's in a very wide position, so he's got to wait for something to drop his way. He shoots! Oh, brilliant! Abel Hernandez, take a bow. That is superb. The Uruguayan was forced wide from the through ball from Diame, but then all of a sudden, bang! What a shot! Tom Heaton didn't stand a chance.
So we just heard Hernandez scoring a pretty fantastic goal against Burnley last season in a pretty routine 3-0 win at home on Boxing Day. But victories against Burnley have been pretty far between. I think we beat them the last promotion season, but apart from that, and particularly in the Premier League, we've found it pretty tough going against them, and I don't actually think we've beaten them yet in the Premier League. How do you guys see this one away at Burnley? I think obviously, under Bruce, we probably would have approached this as a game we couldn't lose and might have set up for a point. But do we see Phelan being a bit more attacking-minded in this one, particularly given where we are on the table? I'll start with you, Logan.
Yeah, certainly. I'm very optimistic about this game. It's probably the first time going into a game against Burnley that I've had that level of optimism. I'm very deflated usually when I look at that as the fixture, particularly coming off their impressive victory against Liverpool there. I know that they certainly won't be an easy team to beat, as any Premier League team we know isn't. But just with the way that the squad started and the fresh faces coming in, I think that there seems to be a pretty positive turnaround in the camp, and I can't wait for it. I think we will go there, and I think Mike Phelan will have a more positive approach to trying to chase goals.
Mitch, how do you see it? I mean, we'll talk about the specific lineup in a second, but particularly Hernandez, who's often been talked about as struggling coming off the international break. Do you see him starting against Burnley? And if so, how do you see us going against them?
Yeah, I think he will start. I'm not sure that Phelan will just start Mbakani or Diamande up front just yet. But yeah, just on the international break thing, I think over the past few seasons under Bruce, once we've hit an international break, our form kind of changes straight after that. I know what happened last year. I think after December, after January, I'm not sure whenever it was, but we were on fire before that, and then after that we had a really poor run of results. So I'm just hoping and praying that doesn't happen again. As Logan said, I kind of dread playing Burnley just because we just don't beat them. Apart from last season, obviously they're just, I don't know. And Andre Gray at home usually always scores, so I don't know. But Phelan, again, I have no idea what to expect from him. So hopefully we can get all 3 points, but we'll see.
And how would you guys pick the team after we've made a couple of decent signings? We touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of Marshall and Yak fighting out for that goalkeeper spot, but would you see room in the side for perhaps Mason to start? And then obviously in defence we've got the headache now of whether Jake continues alongside Davies or whether we give Maguire a run out against Burnley. Would you would either of you make any changes? Mitch?
I've been thinking about this since our last game, actually, and it's been doing my head in. I have no idea where to go with anything, really. If it were me, I'd probably keep Yak in. I think it'd be a huge blow for him if he were to get dropped after what he's been doing for us. I guess the same could be said kind of for Jake, although he was somewhat responsible for that Rashford goal. So maybe put Harry back there, I suppose. I can see Mason starting. I'm not sure any of the other new faces will start. I think they'll probably come off the bench, though.
Logan, do you see room in the starting 11 for Mbakani or Mason or Marshall, perhaps?
I think if anyone is going to be there, I think it will be Ryan Mason. I'm not sure that Mike Phelan will start with any of the new players, though. I'd be very surprised. I think he might keep faith in the squad that's been doing the job, and then kind of look to use the subs early in the second half. And I think Ryan Mason will be the first player to bring on. In saying that, I wouldn't be unhappy to see Ryan Mason start.
And then I'll get from both of you a score prediction. I'll start with you, Logan.
I'm going to say 2-0, us.
Very nice, very confident. And Mitch?
I'll say 1-1 Gray and Hernandez.
Very interesting. And then just to round it off, I'll start with you, Mitch. Do you have a dream headline or a nightmare scenario for us?
For the Burnley game?
Yeah.
Or the dream headline would probably be something to do with our new signings, scoring and winning us the game. Probably Henriksen. That'd probably be the dream. The nightmare, that would just be if we got smashed, probably 3-0. That would just... anything to do with that would be pretty upsetting.
And how about you, Logan? What would be your what would be your dream headline out of the game, and what would be your nightmare scenario?
Well, I'm not allowed to say my dream headline would be a Yak hat-trick again, because I've already So, look, to be honest, my dream headline would be a City win away at Burnley. I would take that. And a nightmare scenario would probably be just a poor performance. Because even the United game, we came away from it feeling very positive. Yeah. So on the back of these new signings, and particularly if Mike Phelan is added to the new signing list, if we were to go to Turf Moor and then put in a poor performance, I think could be somewhat deflating when it seems like we've just been building since the start of the season.
Yeah, I think I'll go with something along the same lines as Mitch and say for the dream headline, if Henriksen, Mbakani and Mason all get on the score sheet, that would probably be my dream headline. Nightmare headline, I'm actually going to go with Hull win 3-0, and after the game, the new owners announce Martin O'Neill as the new manager. I reckon that would be just about the nightmare scenario.
Cool.
I think that would be something that would do our heads in. But thank you both for coming on. We've had quite a lot to cover in this one with the international break, and we've got through everything.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
And thank you everyone for listening in. We'll be back at our usual time of Thursday nights as of next week when we cover the Burnley game, where we've hopefully got another 3 points in the bag, and then looking ahead to our next fixtures. So until then, come on City!
Yeah, the city's on fire. We're going higher and higher. There's no turning back 'cause you're